My earliest memory of Dutch National Ballet, uh, I was I was 17 actually. I did not grow up in a ballet-related family. We didn't actually go to the theatre that much at all, or concerts. We read a lot of books and we went to museums, but that was it. And so it was a friend of mine, my best friend at the time, who was very much into theatre and who took me to see Dutch National Ballet when it was still at the old theatre in the centre of Amsterdam. And it was a performance of Giselle. And I remember, because it was with very famous two dancers, the husband and wife team, Alexandra Radius and Han Ebbelaar. And I was absolutely intrigued by it, not knowing much about it at all, but absolutely intrigued, especially the second act, the willies, the wide act, the sort of almost abstract quality of the movement. And very soon after that, I think maybe only a month or two after that, there was another program that I went to see, and that was it was not the premiere, but it was the premiere run of Five Tangos by Hans Vermaelen. And that I remember so well because it really hit me. I mean, the music that nobody had heard at that time, Astor Piazzolla was not well known. It was actually Hans who introduced that to Dutch audiences. The way the people were dancing, the way they were looking at each other, the strength in it, plus the fact that the fourth movement starts with two men dancing together. And me just coming out as being gay, that had an emotional impact to see to see people on stage that I could relate to in a different way. So for me, there was a very significant and very strong memory. So these two were the first times that I saw Dutch National Ballet, and that's quite a while back now. Okay, for me, the idea to become a dancer came really late. I was 18. I had finished grammar school, I suppose you would call it, gymnasium, here in Holland. And I had applied to go to the United States for an exchange year, for a year at university. And I was studying at an upstate New York college, Hamilton College, that worked together with the college across the street. There was a women's college, Kirkland College. Women had all the fun things. They had sociology, they were much more progressive. They had all the arts. Hamilton had the more conservative studies and a more conservative population as well. And one of my friends that I made there was graduating in mathematics and ballet because there was a dance department. And she said, after a party where I'd been, dancing a lot, she said, maybe you should come and take a dance class. And I did. And this was in, I think, November. And I enjoyed it so much. I thought it was such an interesting and intriguing world. I mean, mind you, I had only seen a few ballet performances and I didn't really know much about it. But being in the studio, that focus, that sacred, separate world, that bubble that you enter into, was something that I found extremely intriguing and appealing. And so during the winter study month, that was the month of January when you did one project, I was part of the musical that was being done in that month and got the part of first dancer because I was one of the few boys who had actually done more than 2 lessons of ballet at the time. And I loved that. And as the season went on, I'd taken ballet into, as one of my courses. And I took as many classes as I could. And by Easter, I think it must have been, I decided, egged on a little bit by my teacher, who was a late starter himself, I decided this is something that I could possibly do professionally. I'd been planning to go to university, and everything was sort of lined up that way to go into a more academic way, studying sociology or cultural anthropology. Those were the things that I was really interested in. But I thought I can always do that later, but I can do dance only now. If I'm lucky, I can possibly still get, a job as a dancer. So I remember calling my parents from the United States, this is back in 1977, and saying, Mom, Dad, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a dancer. And my dad was like, well, that's very nice, but do you know what time it is here? It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't really thought of the time difference. So And they were fine with it. So I auditioned, came to go to the school here in Amsterdam. It was at that time called the Scapino Dance Academy, now the National Ballet Academy. Did 3 years of very intensive training and trying to catch up because, of course, I was way behind. And I did the early classes at 9 o'clock and I did the late classes at 7 o'clock in the evening before the adult beginners. I took every class I could take. And to my big surprise, after 3 years, I got hired into the Dutch National Ballet. I always thought I was going to be a contemporary dancer. And that's what all my teachers always told me. And I wasn't initially taken into the company at the first audition, but really kept asking me back. And then after our graduate performance, my director called and said, Rudy van Danzig wants to speak to you. And it's on a Saturday, and he told me to, he said, you weren't much good in the studio, in class. I wasn't that impressed with you, but you're a real dancer, and I see that on stage, and so I want you in the company. And you have to start on Monday. And I was like, okay. I still had to do my exams. So when on Monday I had to go in early in the morning to the theatre to sign my contract and get the rehearsal schedule. And then I was late for my class, which was the preparation for our exam class. So my teacher was furious. And she had never supported me or never liked me very much. So when I told her in front of the entire class that I was late because I had a contract with Dutch National Ballet and I was starting the following day, she was just gobsmacked. And that was one of the best moments in my life. Sweet revenge. What stands out most, if I can say, what stands out most of the 10 years that I danced with the company is not one particular performance, but it's a whole myriad of memories. And I was an aspirant and an élève and corps de ballet, and I was a choreographer, which was already something I was really grateful for, that given my late start and limited ballet education, I was actually managing to get there. I couldn't believe it. I loved every moment, actually. I loved every moment on stage, particularly. I also loved the rehearsal process, especially when we were doing new things, because I was good at picking up things. And I was really interested in new material. Not so much the very classical ballet, because that was not my forte anyway. But I loved also being together, creating something together. And that's the enduring memory that I have of being a dancer is trying to be something together, trying to create something together, create a performance, the camaraderie, the support that you give one another, the joking, the misery that you have, you know, the hard bus rides and all of that, the tours, but the life together, that bubble that I fell in love with in the beginning, that ballet bubble, that was also what I loved, the whole of the experience of being a dancer, because you are living in a slightly different world than the rest of the world. It is a world in itself, and it's young people who are very focused and dedicated on creating beauty and pushing themselves to their own limits and trying to get better. And there is competition, of course, but I never felt that there was a bad thing. I never felt there was unhealthy competition. And I also felt very much that I understood why other people got promoted and not me, or why I did get a promotion and someone else didn't, and I just loved the whole process of being in a company and working together to create something of beauty that was ephemeral, that was going to be only there for that one evening, for those few hours, for the few moments, and then was gone. The fact that there was this whole institution and all these people that came all over the world to do that and to work together, and then they made something and it was gone. I thought that was remarkable, that us human beings do something like that. And to be part of that was, for me, yeah, there was a great joy, actually. I first started doing choreography actually because I was one of the, I think we were 3 people that started up the choreographic workshop that had existed once before but had not been done for many, many years. And we took the initiative to start that up. And while I was organizing it, I was always someone who was involved in organizing things, or being a dancer's representative, or organizing the end of the year party. I always liked to do things and not just be the instrument, as it were. So when I was helping organizing the choreographic workshop, I thought, well, I wonder what that's like to be in front and to actually create something. I had no idea, and I made a duet for two of my friends who I admired, and it was successful. And people gave me. I got reviews. We had newspapers coming. We had reviews. I had people asking me to create new works and to work on small projects, and one thing led to another, and I was very fortunate that Rudy van Dansen, who is our director, gave me a lot of freedom to go and do things outside, as long as I could still fulfill my obligations as a dancer. But he was very amenable to me taking time off and going to work with other companies, until at a certain point I felt it wasn't right anymore. I was spending half my time creating somewhere else and half my time down. And I thought, knowing that I'd started late and that I'd reached sort of my limitations as a dancer, I thought, well, I don't know where this choreography thing is going. So let's try that, and let's actually focus fully on that, because after 10 years, I sort of knew, as I said, where I was as a dancer, and there was not much growth possible. And who knew what was going to happen with choreography? So I remember making up business cards and putting my name on and saying choreographer. And that's right, I'm a choreographer now. So that's what I did. I stopped dancing with the company, became a freelance choreographer. And my first commission was actually with the company. It was for a big stage, a full-on performance here in this theater. And that's 31 years ago. Okay, well, after having been a freelance choreographer for 7 years, and working not only in Holland and on a variety of projects, from television to film to ballets and contemporary dance pieces for companies. Also, I worked internationally a lot, and in the end, so much so that I was hardly ever in Holland, and I was hardly ever at home. And living out of a suitcase has its appeals, but it also has its limitations. And after a while, I really started to not enjoy being on the road so much and being away from my partner, who in the last year that I was freelancing, I saw for maybe 3 weeks out of the entire year. So I thought, I want to build something also, and not start afresh every time. It has its advantages coming in as a freelancer, because everybody loves you when you're a freelance teacher or when you're a guest choreographer, and everybody wants to do their best for you. And then by the time that they get used to you, you're gone, which is, that's when the honeymoon is over. But I really got tired of that. And also I wanted to build something. And in addition to that, I had been to so many companies, and some companies I thought, oh, this is really weird how they've organized things. And I'm sure that could be done better. And better for the dancers. Things where I felt where dancers didn't have any say, and there was no consideration of their development, of their career development, their personal development. I thought, well, surely that could be done better. And then this opportunity came up, a directorship in Perth, Western Australia. I had to look it up on the map, to be honest. I didn't know that there was a company there. And it was a company of 20 dancers in need of a new image and a whole new repositioning, new rebranding, everything, new rep, everything new. So that was an exciting thing. And I went through the interview process by telephone mostly, because that was before Zoom. And they decided they wanted me. And so I was the preferred candidate, and they flew me out to Australia with my partner, because we said we want to do this adventure, but it has to be a good thing for him as well. And after traveling through Australia, following the company that was actually on tour, we thought, let's do it. It's a great adventure. Who knows what's going to happen? And it was a very exciting time. It was I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Well, in the 60 years that Dutch National Ballet exists now, so much has happened, and the evolution has been so strong and so steep, actually, so quick, if you think about it. There's not many large-scale ballet companies of this level in the world that are only 60 years old. Most companies, ballet companies, are much older and are in existence for much longer. There was no ballet culture in Holland until it started up a little bit after the Second World War in the late 40s and early 50s, with sometimes foreign strong women that started up ballet schools, and from there on started up little companies. These companies grew in size. There was a real hunger in post-war Holland for culture, for new things. So there was a great platform for ballet to develop. So the first milestone for the company, for Dutch National Ballet, would be when the company was formed in 1961 through the merger of two other companies, and finally became a national institution. And Sonja Gaskell, the first director, led that for 8 years. And she was one of the driving forces behind the development of ballet as an art form in Holland. And because it was, in a way, unhindered by tradition, a lot was possible. You know, we had to import tradition, and classical ballet was imported. There were Russian teachers and Russian choreographers coming in to teach not just ballet and style, but also ballets, also from England. But there was also room for new work, and that's why people like Rudy van Danzig and Tour van Schaik and Hans van Manen could blossom. And they all did like 2-3 ballets a year. They created enormous amount of work in a very short amount of time. And that led to this whole company, you know, developing an identity and a repertoire that was quite unique in the world. And Rudy, of course, took over from Sonja Gaskell. He was the director for over 20 years. After him came Wayne Eagling. There was a big shift in focus. Wayne was here for 12 years. He was also the one who commissioned me as a choreographer for the first time. And he brought up the level, the technical level of the company very much, and brought a lot of international repertoire to the company. And then when I was in the position to take over, which is now 19 years ago, I think the development continued. We've always kept, in terms of repertoire, sort of the 3 pillars, the big classics, the 19th century classics, the best of the international repertoire with a strong focus also on the work of Brandsen, more than some other choreographers. And the works that were created here. I've already mentioned the 3 main choreographers, but also in the last 20 years, Christoph Pastor, David Dawson, Juan Jorquez, and other choreographers, and myself, other choreographers from our house. And now a new generation, Milena Sidorova, Wupje Kuindersma, Cedric Verwoerd, our new young creatives, plus the connections that we made with choreographers from around the world, like Christopher Wheeldon, Alexa Radmansky, Wayne McGregor, Sidi Larbi-Sharkawi, Bill Forsyth, just a whole range of top choreographers from the world. And what is important for the company now is that I do think that we have a very wide and repertoire, but also some things that are quite unique to us. And I think in any company that's of importance to have your own niche, you have your own thing, your own identity. Well, in looking for choreographers or inviting choreographers, first of all, I always try to see if there's choreographers of whom I think they could be able to work with classically trained ballet dancers. That's important because we also have a very good contemporary dance company just down the road, Netherlands Dance Theatre. And a lot of the choreographers that work with them really work with very good contemporary dancers, and are not necessarily the choreographers that I would invite. Also, not to mix up our identities too much. But that's something that I always look for. Can you work within the time and other constraints of a big ballet company where there's always more than one program? A lot of contemporary choreographers tend to work on one project for an extended period of time, really focused, and it's wonderful if you can do that. That's never, hardly ever the case with ballet companies. So that's one criterion. We tend to look for choreographers who really try to do something with the classical ballet technique, whether they go away from it and have their complete own language, but that is complementary in some way or challenging for our dancers, or whether they are actually really trained and grounded in the classical technique and take that extra step further. Can go both ways, but I always look for people where the combination of our dancers and their knowledge and craft and stuff can be a plus, because I've seen many examples of contemporary choreographers who get invited into classical ballet companies where the end result is not better for either party, where there's no win-win, and that's what you're always looking for. I'm looking for choreographers. So the classical language is the base, and that's the basis of what we do, what our company is founded on, and what all these dancers that come from all corners of the world have been training for their entire lives. So I like it when they get challenged in that respect, when their knowledge, when their embodied knowledge gets used and challenged. And I'm not always so impressed with choreographers that don't use that. All of that material, all of that gold, all of that knowledge, all of that expertise, all of that talent, you want to put that to use in some way. In Holland, we have a tradition, I already mentioned some of the choreographers, of, a more autonomous way of looking at dance, not necessarily as a vehicle for storytelling, but dance as pure dance. And that's possibly because of the influence of Brandsen, which was very strong, especially in the formative years of the company, and the choreographers that came after that. Not to say that there can't be story ballets, because we do all that, but there are companies where the narrative ballet is much more important and the theatrical element is much more important. For me, dance starts with music and not necessarily with the story. Sometimes I have made story ballets, and sometimes the story is one that I want to tell through dance, but there has to be a very good reason why dance is the medium to tell a certain story. Because dance can be a completely autonomous art form, like music, that can tell you everything without words, without you being able to put it into words. That's the beauty of dance, that it can touch you in ways that no other medium can. Of course, as a director, you grow as a person. You grow, well, at least you hope so. You hope to grow and change, and I hope that you learn. One hopes to learn from the past and from experiences that you've had. And yes, of course, there are things that I do very differently now. I tend to be quite involved in everything, but I hope that I'm a bit less of a control freak than I used to be, and give more freedom to. I'm better at delegating and giving my team also more freedom to do what they need to do. Hopefully better at listening also to dancers and dancers' personal things. I remember when I was just starting out as a director, I had a very clear vision, and it was very important that that clear vision be communicated. And I didn't always think too much about the impact that would have on certain people. And there are decisions that I've made that in hindsight, I wish I would have. I don't regret those decisions, but the way I communicated them could have been better. Well, we have, of course, the junior company, and the last few years since we have the junior company, which is now 9 years, we tend to take on most new dancers through the junior company. So the junior company is a bridge between the schools, the educational system, and the main company. They're in this building, they work with us. It's a 2-year program, 12 dancers at the moment, quite a few more because we've taken on dancers from Ukraine who couldn't be there anymore, who have fled. We've created extra positions for them. But it's a 2-year program in principle. It's a 2-year program that allows young dancers to get a lot of stage experience because they do their own program and they work in the big productions that we do. They have class 3 times a week separately, so they get a lot of individual attention, and 3 times a week with the main company, so they also get to be inspired by what it's like to be with the big dancers. The juniors come in when they're 17, 18, 19, 20 through auditions. A lot of them come in from our own school. Of course, the last 2-3 years we haven't had any big auditions because of the COVID period, but because before that we would have auditions, and we'd have about 700-800 applications and we selected about 120, 150 people to come to Amsterdam, and out of those people we would select a few that would be taken into the junior company. Now, from the junior company, not everybody can move up to the main company, but some do, and then they go into the company where we have, like many companies, a hierarchy going from élève to corps de ballet, choreographer, grand sujet, soloist, and principal dancer, ultimately. We have at the moment, I think, 78 dancers in the 80 dancers in the main company, and 18 in the junior, or even 20 in the junior company. So we're bigger than we've been for a very long time. Dancers have 1-year contracts when they join the main company, and they can have up to 3 1-year contracts, and then it's decision time whether or not they get a full lifetime contract. Lifetime contract here means until you're 38. 38 is the mandatory retirement age, which doesn't mean that we don't have dancers who don't continue after that. We do have dancers that continue also after 38. It is always a discussion between me and the individual dancer, and it tends to be principals or soloists that sometimes go on longer. And if there's no reason for people to stop, we're not like Paris Opera, where there is a very strict cutoff age. So we have people who go on longer, but in general, and especially the last few years, we see that people tend to be okay to look for a different future, because it's a very demanding profession, not just physically, but also mentally. And I think that's the part that often gets overlooked or underestimated, how hard it is on your mind also to be doing this constantly, to challenge yourself always, to be surrounded by others, but constantly fighting to get to go further, and still not lose yourself. So that's a bit how the structure works, how people come in. And at the moment, I think a bit more than 50% of the company was originally dancing in the junior company, so came through the junior company. And that number is increasing every year. So I think next year it's 60%. So we have principals now that started in junior company and soloists. So throughout the ranks, we're educating, training our own people.
How do you?
It's honestly been very rare that a dancer at 38 who was obviously for everyone else timed that this person would stop, that it wasn't clear to that person themselves. And that's why also that is part of the contract, and say, well, sorry, that's what it is. There was one, I remember at the very beginning of my directorship, there was one actually principal dancer who turned 38, and I was like, well, this is, to say that the next year will be your last year, how will you be? And she was furious and outraged at it. And I was quite surprised that she didn't see herself, that it was really time to go. But one learns, and sometimes you have to help people make that step. It is difficult. It is difficult if you've been a dancer since you're 4 to imagine another future. And some people close their eyes for that. But all of us, all dancers, have to at one point let go of that and have a different future. And it's actually good to start thinking about that sooner rather than later. So we have a lot of dancers who are also doing something else on the side, learning something else. Not all of them, and not everybody has the space for that, in the brain space or the time for it. But we've had dancers that studied, one principal dancer that studied to become a nurse and did almost all of her studies while still being a principal dancer. And she said, I want to be a nurse because all my life I've been just thinking about myself and my own body, and I want to take care of other people now. We've had dancers that study to become pilots. We have actually 2 pilots who are flying passenger flights and on big airlines now, and they did most of their studies. I can still see them with their big books in the studio while they were dancing. So I think it's a good thing that you're, as a dancer, aware of where you are in general. You're aware of what your place in the world is. That you're not just in your own little bubble, but we are in a bigger bubble. But you also know that there is an outside world, and at one point you will have to participate in that again. And it means that there won't be anyone to tell you what to do. There's no schedules. There's no one to hold your hand. But there's always no one to say, now you do this and now you do. You have to make your own decisions. So the earlier you learn how to have some form of independence and have your own thinking, the better it is. And I think that's one change that we see in recent years, that dancers and directors are working together much more to prepare dancers also for that new future, by giving them more agency, by giving them more information, and by making it also absolutely possible to talk about that. Because I remember when I first started dancing, that was not something one talked about. Doing something else? No. You had to be completely devoted to be a dancer. I remember stories of the early years when if a girl would even get engaged, she would be dismissed as being not really faithful to her art because she had other interests. That has changed. And now we see that dance is a profession where you can be totally dedicated but also be a human being with an outside life. My proudest moment as director of Dutch National Ballet is actually every time I see a young dancer doing something on stage that they didn't think they could do, or when I see a performance by a production by a young choreographer, by a choreographer who has done something remarkable and transformative. Those are the moments that are my proudest moments. You know, that's what it's really about. By giving other people opportunities, and to see that they get taken and that they can fly. That's the best. That's what I love about being able to do this. Dancer, choreographer, director are all great jobs in different times of your life, I think. Dancer is a great job, but I couldn't have been a dancer always. I always was, I was eager to do other things and eager to be more involved in creating things. Choreographer, fantastic. But I also love the other side of being a director. Partly the managerial side, but also the business side, and the being able to help people in a really profound way to help them with their careers and their lives, which is different than as a choreographer. You're more, it's about your creation. Choreographers can be quite selfish and need to be selfish, like all artists need to be selfish in a way. Dancers as well, you know. And as a director, it's not about you, it's about everyone else. So it's where you are in your life. It depends on who you are also as a person, and in what stage in your life you can be that. And at this stage in my life, I'm really happy to be a director.